Hey folks, welcome to a podcast about Catholic things. This is Eric, the ambassador of common sense, and I'm here with...
I'm Dan, the ambassador of nonsense. Hello everyone. And speaking of nonsense, the beer of the week is Three Floyds Gumball Head. Three Floyds is a brewery in Munster, Indiana. And on the Gumball Head can, by the way, Gumball Head is a wheat beer. So not your typically barley. And I'll be honest, wheat beers generally are not my favorite, but this one's pretty good. The can, all of Three Floyd's beer art is interesting. This one features what looks like an angry-looking cat holding a cigarette in the corner of his mouth, and he's got a great big splat of bubble gum for a nose. And on the side of the can it says, "It's not normal."
It's like a emoji.
Almost like, yeah, like some kind of weird emoji.
Angry emoji.
Yeah. So, and these are not normal times, so...
Okay, I guess it's not too bad. I say that about all the... I either say they're terrible or they're not too bad.
But you liked one of them the other week.
I did like that, the one that aged in the bourbon barrel, I think.
Well, there was that, and you kind of liked the Busted Knuckle, too, the week before.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did like that. This is, I don't know. It's got kind of a weird aftertaste. I don't really know how to explain it. But see... Well,
you know what I found? I've been training myself to be a connoisseur of beer liquor mixes, so just like half a shot of some kind of liquor in certain beers kind of just slightly changes the flavor profile. I mean, I'm not talking about like adding enough to make the beer truly potent or anything like that. But like IPAs, I tend to like a little bit of rum. This one actually tastes good with a tiny little bit of gin in it.
Well, I don't have any gin. And if I did, I probably still wouldn't.
You have some rubbing alcohol? It tastes the same.
I'll pour in some rubbing alcohol and let you know how that tastes.
That's what gin tastes like to me, is rubbing alcohol.
That's what? Gin?
That's what gin, yeah. That's what gin always tastes like to me, is rubbing alcohol.
That's what Jason drinks, is rubbing alcohol.
he calls it gin, though, doesn't he?
Yeah, he calls it gin. Well, okay, so I'll link the Gumball thing up there. And, of course, this week there's still plenty of COVID-19 because we're still not working.
Yeah.
But I guess we get to that later. The subject this week is going to be pornography, which is something I'm surprised we haven't done one on this until now. And
me too. We've kind of danced around it a little bit. We've touched on it with some of our other ones, but we've never focused an episode on it.
Yeah. And I think specifically I want to do pornography addiction this week.
Okay.
And how how Catholics can deal with it, because there's surprisingly little information out there on it. You think there's a lot because everybody's got a radio show about it, but
right,
there really isn't much. And I'll explain that later.
Okay. Well, you've got to admit, it's one of those topics that people may be a little bit trepidatious talking about, especially in a publicly aired kind of situation. I mean, once in a while you'll hear a priest mention it from the pulpit, but it's things relating to sexuality in general. There's a sort of we still carry this kind of sense that, that's not something that you just come out and talk about in polite society.
And of course, I guess with having introduced the subject, you would know by now, probably not a kid's subject.
Right. Parents, you might want to
We'll probably say things you wouldn't want to explain to your kids.
So maybe don't listen to it while you're driving your kids to school. Oh, wait a minute. You can't drive them to school right now.
They can't go to school right now.
Driving your kids to the grocery. That's right.
You're not even allowed doing that. If you go to the grocery store, you got to go alone. I don't know. This is crazy.
Yeah. It's nuts. We'll get back to it.
here's the thing about pornography and pornography addiction. Go back 10, maybe 15 years, and it was on every single Catholic radio station were doing shows on it, and a lot of people were talking about it. Mm-hmm. And two things on that. First of all, very few people outlined any kind of real plan for guys who are addicted to pornography.
It's an actual treatment plan.
So if you were addicted to pornography at the time, you and wanting to quit, you looked around, and everybody talked about it. Everybody gave you information, but information as far as, well, how do I stop looking at it? That wasn't out there. And another thing about this, 10 or 15 years ago, people were all saying the same thing, that pornography suddenly got really huge because, before that, a guy, if he wanted to look at pornography, he went to a store and he had to buy it, and it was embarrassing. And now suddenly it's in our homes, and guys are looking at it without having to go out and get it. Mm-hmm. And because of the way we are, because of the way we were raised, guys who are starting to have a problem with it are not talking about it because it's just secret. If it's a secretive thing. Mm-hmm. But this has changed over the past 10 years. And for guys our age, it still is this way. But you talk to millennials, it's almost like no big deal to them. They don't mind talking about it.
Okay.
It's weird.
That certainly is weird. But let me ask what you mean. Do you mean that they don't? It's like they're not even embarrassed about the fact of it being out there, and even like the idea of looking at it regularly, or that they don't mind talking about it as a sickness and an addiction?
Both a little bit, but mostly the fact that the younger crowd doesn't mind admitting that, yeah, I look at it, yeah, I masturbate, yeah, and I maybe even I do it every day or every other day. And you'll find younger people are talking this way a lot more. And so on the one hand, these problems can be discussed. On the other hand, a lot of millennials
a normalization of the behavior.
Yeah, they've lost their sense of shame, mm-hmm. which I'm not saying shame is good, but you should be a little bit embarrassed about your sins, any sin.
Yeah.
But it seems like this one more than others.
Well, it's even, there should be. And, even like when you look at the scriptures, like St. Paul talks about sexual sins. And even, interesting. Well, we're pretty sure. I mean, I read
it seems like a sexual sin that he's talking about. I mean, he says something fettering of the flesh or something like that, right? Is that what you're talking about?
When he talks about immorality.
Oh, okay.
He uses the general term like immorality,
Romans.
But like in Romans, when he talks about immorality and that, immorality, I forget exactly how he worded it, but the manner in which it defiles you. But the thing is, I read kind of an exposition of the language used to translate that, and how even with like the slightly older biblical translations, there was an unwillingness to put it into the modern equivalent of the raw language that we find in the existing texts of his actual letters.
You're going to have
in the
to
original languages. That. So, for example, like he didn't use a generic term immorality. He used a term that explicitly referenced sexuality and sexual immorality and adultery, fornication, and things like that. Not just a sort of generic euphemized term of immorality. So he was more blunt, in other words, in his language, and in a lot of biblical translations don't carry that bluntness over. Now, this is an article that I read. I forget exactly what magazine I read it in, but if I had known, a week ago that we were going to be doing this, I probably would have looked it up.
I popped this on Danny like 20 minutes before the phone call. He said, "What are we talking about?" I said, "I don't know. How about this?" All right.
Yeah, it needs to be talked about, though.
Right. Okay. The Catechism only gives a couple brief reasons why pornography is a grave sin. Mm-hmm. Mostly it talks about it creating a fantasy, and really that's really all it does talk about. But there's so much more to it than that.
Well, and that's even an unsatisfactory answer, because I know that, for example, we did a couple of like one of our first episodes, we kind of got on about how you people go through life and they have these sort of sideline fantasies and stuff like that. Well, okay, and so are we going to say, well, okay, because it involves fantasies, it's therefore wrong, and that's the main driver of the immoral aspect of pornography? Well, no, there's something very unsatisfying in that kind of an answer. It's like, no, wait a minute, there's kind of a magic, and this is why the shaming aspect, should be is kind of a more healthy thing, even though maybe it's a good thing that people are able to talk about it more frankly these days. But there's something magical about sex. I mean, the end result of the process, and the purpose of the process involves the creation of a new person that, once created, is there eternally, forever. Right. Never gonna become uncreated. It's not even like with animal sex and with tree seed pollinations and stuff like that. It's
right. It's not like
comes to
breeding.
human. Yeah. No. There's a real eternal permanent consequence to the activity. And so when you say, okay, but we're not talking about sex, we're just talking about, maybe viewing some pictures and masturbating or whatever, that's okay, but it's still tied with that, because what you're doing is you're going after all the physical reasons that you go after sex and cutting off the mystical reasons why sex is created in the first place.
Right.
And there really should be an aspect of kind of shame to that. It ought to be something that you feel, oh wait, I've not only done something that is written down in a rule book somewhere that this is forbidden, but I've sort of misused something that is a key instrument of human purpose.
Right.
And it's in that sense that there should be that sense of kind of wanting to hide away.
Wanting to hide it, and just a feeling of horror at what you've misused.
Mm-hmm.
It should make you ashamed in the eyes of the public, but in your own thoughts, there should be kind of even a disgust of yourself. And I'm not talking about self-loathing. I'm talking about the act itself should fill you with kind of a sense of dread, like, oh no, look what I'm doing.
How could I have done that? How could I be doing this? Exactly. Why can't I do better? Why can't I, as strong, for example, as the desires and so forth may be, and the passions you give yourself over to, there should also be, at least on the intellectual level, a recognition of the gravity sense of how momentous it is. Yeah, how grave the subject matter is in terms of human behavior.
And I think part of that stems from the fact that I guess you could go all the way back to the 60s, where it was free love, and the raw power of sex somehow got overlooked. And
right.
And it still is, even though all the evidence of it being powerful is still there. I mean, people do terrible, terrible things because of sex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
look at the human trafficking industry.
Right. I mean, just the fact that that's happening should make anyone realize how powerful sex is. And so that it shouldn't be something tossed around on the internet. It's and we've lost that respect and the awe that we ought to have for it. You know, another thing is that I think it's something about men. We tend to dive into things like never halfway. I guess sometimes we do things halfway, but if we're really into something, we get really into it. Like if you suddenly decide you want to collect stamps, it suddenly takes
full
over.
Bore. Right.
And when you see the power of sex,
that's a good point. I mean, men taking on the stamp. If a man it gets to a point where he's going to collect stamps, he's going to go collect stamps, and he starts. A man won't see an interesting stamp and say, "Oh, that's interesting. I'll keep this somewhere, and maybe I'll see another interesting one somewhere, and I'll acquire a collection." It's never like that.
Right. He just
when
we decide we're into something, we get into it all the way.
Yeah, even often to the point where it's we might ignore responsibilities.
Right.
A man without being addicted might spend money that he shouldn't spend on some baseball cards.
Yeah. I've done those kinds of things.
Especially when he's new to the hobby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you watch Malcolm in the Middle?
I've seen a few episodes. Every time I see it, it's funny, but I've never actually watched it as a series, no.
Throughout the series, Hal, the father, he suddenly sees something or gets into something and does this. He goes way overboard about everything, and he's investing all his work time and all the time he has into this thing. He did one on speed walking. He did one. Do you remember the dance video games where you step on things? And,
Dance Revolution stuff?
Yeah, something like that. He did one of those. There's a whole lot of them where he does this.
I got to stop you there. I'm just laughing because Terry dropped her iron, clothes iron, at one point, and it kind of busted it, and it wasn't working. And she's saying, "Well, I think I need a new iron. This one's, messed up this way and stuff." And so I took it and managed to take it apart, like all the way to the point where I was able to find the broken part, glue it, make it right, fix it, put it back together. And then she was upset with me because now she didn't get a new iron. But while I had it all the way apart, a couple of the kids walked by and they just looked at it and they're like, Dad's gone nuts. And they showed me this little clip of Hal, and I forget exactly what the sequence is. It's like he's going to change a light bulb, and he goes in a room. It's like flips a switch, the light's burned out. So he gets the light bulb, and he's going to change it, and he goes into another place, and there's a thing that needs to be cleaned out, and so he goes to another place and finds something. And he ends up with the car, and he hears like a strange noise in the car, and he's got like the engine apart. And then Lois walks in, and she's like, "Aren't you going to change the light in there?" He's like, "What do you think I'm doing?
What does it look like I'm doing?"
That's the one. Yeah.
That one is great. Yeah.
But you're right. That's exactly how men are. That's one of the things about some of those sitcoms like that is the reason they're funny is because they hone in on those kind of true to life aspects of things.
Right. One of the you do find the saints writing about sex, but not a whole lot. I bet you could find more of the saints writing on things like pride than on sex.
Yes. In fact, when the saints write about sex, what's interesting about the saints who write about sex is that they often are. It's more like they don't quite know what to make of it because it's so magical, because it's so mystical.
Right.
Saint Augustine actually held the theory that every act of sex has some element of sin to it because you give yourself over completely to a passion. Thomas Aquinas later felt like he needed to treat on that. He disagreed with St. Augustine, and he had his reasons. But it's when the saints write about it, it's not like they are writing about it from the inside almost. Although, I mean, I know St. Augustine lived a somewhat...
we know he did.
The depraved
and
life
Aquinas
before he
did not.
turned around. Aquinas never had he had the temptation the one time they have the story of the episode with when his brothers sent a hooker in to try to seduce him, but since then it was said that he never experienced that particular temptation.
And he was probably better
he was
able
the one
to talk about it than Augustine.
That's right, exactly. But you're right.
Fulton Sheen said that sin is the one thing that we do not learn through experience. The more experience we have in sin, the less knowledge and understanding we have of it, because we fool ourselves into thinking stupid things. Yeah,
that's right. Experience. That's a case where when it comes to sin, it's like the opposite of. Wisdom is born of experience, but when it comes to sin, it's like ignorance is born of experience, kind of a phenomenon going on.
Right.
Which is kind of interesting to geek out philosophically for a minute here, because, I've been listening to various Thomistic Institute podcasts and stuff, and one of the things that once in a while they'll talk about, in these philosophy podcasts is the problem of evil, objection to like the existence of God and that kind of stuff. And one of the things that Catholic thinkers have sort of realized is this idea that everything that God created is good, and therefore every evil that there is, even if it appears to be a positive act on the part of a person, every single act of evil that a person can commit or participate in or experience is a deprivation of a specific positive good that God wills. When you view it that way, it makes perfect sense that sin is going to breed ignorance, because with every act of sin, you're depriving yourself more of some positive good that God willed for you.
Thomas Aquinas talked about he called it folly, or at least in the translation that I read. I'm seeing if I could find it real quick. I'm looking at a book, and I probably can't because I'm not going to try.
That's okay.
But he specifically talked about the fact that immorality causes us to be ignorant, and it causes us to hide the truth from ourselves. And he specifically says that lust is the biggest way that we do that, because it's it is the best of all passions, and so it is the chief way in which we make ourselves ignorant of morality.
Right.
I'm probably not. I'm not saying it right, but
no. But I think that's exactly a you probably are saying it right, and I think that's kind of it kind of feeds into this mentality that, or this realization that sins of lust, especially things like masturbation or fantasizing impure thoughts or something like that.
Yeah,
they're not the worst sins a person can create. I mean, obviously, committing murder is a far worse sin than masturbation. But the thing is, they're the most accessible sins. It's kind of like they're gateway sins into a world where you increasingly deny the sinfulness of sinful things.
Yeah. Yeah, it becomes almost like a drug.
Yeah. And,
now,
even to the point where I'm sure that, you've got, obviously there is a sex trafficking industry. That means that there are people who are consumers in that industry.
Yeah.
I've got to think that not everybody who is out there engaging in these depraved transactions, especially in I think a lot of the Asian countries, probably goes on here in the United States too, but underage girls and even I guess underage boys and so on and so forth. I've got to think that the people who are engaging in this activity and consuming this, they didn't start out that way,
right?
Yeah. I mean, they many of them probably when they were first starting down a path that eventually led them there, they probably would have been disgusted at the idea of they themselves participating in that, and yet there they are.
I think this especially happens when you talk about addiction, and it might not be the best way to talk about the obsession of pornography that some men develop, because to a lot of people,
as an addiction,
right? Well, to a lot of people, an addiction is a very specific thing, and to a heroin addict might be a little bit miffed about us calling pornography an addiction, but
right.
But the way we use that word nowadays, I think it's
yeah.
If you have a destructive behavior and you're unable to stop, I think it's safe to call it an addiction.
That's kind of what. Yeah, I was going to say that. Okay, the heroin user who maybe is acutely aware of his own condition and deplores it. Yeah, he may think, "What do you mean addiction? You got to, you don't. You're not even in the same ballpark or the same county as I am with regards to." The nature of the compulsion. But, I certainly think that if you're going to refer, for example, to gambling addiction.
Right.
I would
shopping
think that,
addiction.
They've got like shopaholics and even other sicknesses. They don't, I guess I don't hear it referred to as an addiction, but they talk about hoarders and, stuff like that. So, yeah,
for lack of a better word, I think we're safe calling it an addiction.
Yeah.
And there are some people who will argue that there is a chemical component to it. I personally don't believe that's what the addiction is.
Oh.
Like
right.
Hormones and whatnot that come from looking at pornography and or masturbating.
But the hormones themselves, and in fact, a lot of them, are involved in just healthy sex as well, between couples. But,
right.
The hormones themselves are a real neurological thing. It's just that
right.
I think when they're brought forth in their misplaced context, they combine with other mental processes to reinforce a difficulty. It's kind of weird to talk about it that way. They reinforce a difficulty in exerting what you would will for yourself. I think is probably the right way to, to explain it.
Well, if you look at when you're studying any addiction, they talk about four different stages of it, and you could see all these really at work in pornography addiction. The first one being experimentation, and I think all of us men remember a certain time in our lives when we first saw pornography, how exciting it was, and how curious it is. And the next one,
probably at school for most people, right? And so
it was
the
before
fact that
school
you can't...
for me. I saw it before school.
What do you mean before school?
Before being the age to go to school.
Wow. Okay. I think I was at least in. I don't know. Up the street they had the folks that had the garage and the leftover the garage and.
Right.
And, they had the magazines there that once in a while everybody would get out and sit around and look at. And it was more like, sit around everybody around one magazine because there was only one.
Right.
It was like a hidden thing, not like
Right.
everybody sit around with their own copy or anything like that. But I think I was at least school age.
Well, you boys did that, and then you all went home, and then me and my little friend
I know
what were they looking at?
About. Yeah.
What were they doing? Oh, that's what we're looking at. Okay.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's like I mean, here's the thing. I think in both cases, we were boys at an age that we didn't even understand why it was interesting.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
However, I think that school is a big area where that gets introduced. So I was going to say, hey, if there's one good thing about this coronavirus stupid shutdown thing, the fact that your kids aren't going to school might not be the worst of it.
Yeah, it's not all that bad.
That might actually be so.
Well, the second stage talked about is the misuse/abuse stage. Now, it might be a little bit different here because unless you're married, any kind of use of your sexual appetite is an abuse.
That's what I was gonna. It's like, okay, like for example, like experimentation. Let's relate it to, for example, alcoholism.
Okay.
You might get introduced to alcoholic drinks, at an age where it's completely appropriate, and I'm not talking about legal alcohol purchasing age. I'm talking about in terms of actual maturity. Yeah. At an age where it's completely appropriate, and in a context where the alcoholic effect is not, it's not something that you can notice directly as an effect. It's more like it just kind of seemed like maybe the evening was more enjoyable if you had a glass of wine or something like that.
Okay.
And then so I'm thinking that the experimenting is when you maybe that first time, assuming that this is at that appropriate age, you realize that, oh, wait a minute, you're a little bit unsteady, and maybe you're having a little bit more fun. And so you go ahead and have that extra glass for that evening. And then, and maybe the next weekend, the same thing happens. I'm thinking that's experimenting. It's not quite at the abuse. But here's the thing. Having seen how that could go, you back off and you just stick with the one glass of wine or whatever. You're still using alcohol, having experimented, and you're not abusing it.
Right.
With something like pornography, exactly as you just said, especially pornography, but really any, real intentional sexual faculty, unless it's in the context of intending to make love to your spouse, it's an abuse, period.
Right.
There's not a use that isn't a misuse.
And one of the big problems is that children are not taught that it's an abuse from an early age, even though they're given they're given ways to experiment and then abuse and misuse it from a very early age.
Right. Right.
So the pornography is there for kids to see and to abuse themselves, but a lot of kids, when they are doing it, do not understand that it's an abuse.
Right, because they haven't been told, taught, whatever. And
right.
of course, the
talking
very
about things like mortal sin.
Right, and well, we as a I don't know, as a culture. I don't want to say as a church because in terms of official, but as a culture within the church, as a generation, we've kind of stopped talking about mortal sin, and as a you were talking about how millennials versus our generation in terms of willingness to talk about sex and that kind of stuff. Yeah. The talk. We would think about, okay, how and when and in what context am I going to have the talk with each of my kids? And because it's not like a topic you bring up around the dinner table or anything like that.
Yeah, you got to plan a special trip or let's go fishing or something like that.
Yeah, well, hey, you ever think about where babies come from? Whatever. I don't know how, but the thing is, it's something that from our youth we've had this healthy respect for that makes it difficult for us to talk about. And so it's even if we have the talk with our kids, we're not doing it. Chances are we never even realized until it's too late the importance of giving and reinforcing the tools to withstand the kinds of temptations that are, in place
that are going to
today.
be a part of their daily lives almost.
Yeah. So it's, that.
And I don't know if we even have the tools necessary for that yet. I mean,
the moral tools, the exercise of what, that's where things like Lent and that kind of stuff comes up, which it kind of makes it a shame that the church, back in the sticks, is this a coincidence? I mean, did Satan play his cards well here or what? Right at the time with when the sexual revolution was gaining momentum is when the church dropped a bunch of the will strengthening disciplines, like the kinds of fasting and the times of year that you did fast and all that kind of stuff that they used to have.
Yeah, it's like if you're being told next week you're going to run a marathon, or next month you're going to run a marathon, so take this next month, take it easy to save your strength up. And it's the opposite of way you got to do things.
Right. Every coach knows that's the wrong way.
Right. Misuse and abuse is pretty straightforward, and it comes from a sexual appetite, which we all have. There's nothing abnormal about it. The problem is that, like with most addictions, it becomes something that's not always sexual, and things like ritualization happen, and it becomes a way to deal with life in general.
So explain that ritualization.
So, it might start off.
I have never read a explanation of the stages of addiction development. So not just in a sexual context, but in any addiction context, what do we mean by ritualization?
Well,
is it like, okay, Friday nights, finally I'm done with the work week and I don't have to get up in the morning. I'm going to get slam drunk every Friday night. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Right, and it becomes to where it is a ritual, but a lot of times it's you have your normal nights that you're going to get drunk, but then it seems like more and more every time you have a bad day at work, you start doing it.
Until
it becomes something that you just do when you get home from work, because whatever happened during the day, you need something to deal with that. Or
I see.
When you get done paying your bills, all that stress that was caused, you do something to relieve the stress. And it becomes part of a ritual that you do. Or for, kids coming home from school, the first thing they do is run upstairs and shut the bedroom door, because it becomes just part of their routine. Mm-hmm. And it becomes a way for them to deal with whatever it is they have to deal with.
Right, right.
And then when they suddenly decide, I don't want to be doing this, it's all the harder to stop because it's become part of their lives. And I think
so that's
when you're ritualizing, I think then you can say you are addicted.
Okay. So
when the desire to look at pornography or the desire to drink or anything else really has nothing to do with whatever originally caused you to drink. Normally most people drink because it's fun. You go out on a night and you're having fun and you drink. Mm-hmm. By the time you're drinking alone to try to create a better feeling inside you, you could say you're having a problem.
Right.
And so when looking at pornography and masturbating has nothing to do with sex, it's not because you're horny, then you could probably say at that point you've got a problem.
Okay. It's crossed over from being a bad response to a natural inclination into being a
almost a survival method.
A poor response to a disconnected inclination. It's like you're looking for the excuse and giving into that rather than simply giving into a mere temptation.
You might compare it to, you get married, you're with this woman, and every now and then she does something that really makes you angry, and you scream at her and yell at her and insult her and make her cry. Mm-hmm. Well, now you've responded to the anger in a bad way, and it's caused problems.
Right.
But then you come home from work, and your boss has been yelling at you, and you just take that... You go off on her, even though she hasn't done anything. Yeah.
Then now it's right. I see. That would be an example, a different kind of example of ritualization.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Now, here's what's scary. The fourth stage. The fourth stage is escalation.
Okay.
And this is where you start to see bizarre behavior. Because you've already gotten to the point where your actions really aren't part of lust anymore.
Right.
And so
you're not reacting to desires. The behavior itself has become its own purpose.
And so it escalates into weird things that normally for most people, and for you at one time, would never have been even a consideration. Things like homosexuality
or the guy who goes to the brothels with the 12-year-olds and stuff like that.
Right.
He would have been
the pedophiles.
He would have been disgusted at the thought when he was first starting down some road. Maybe one day he was on a business trip, decided to get hire a prostitute or something like that. Whatever. Okay, all right.
But his actions are so disassociated from sex at this point. It's also where look, as far as I know, in every one that I've looked at, and it's not like I made a study of it, but as far as I know, every serial killer that they've ever researched has had stashes of pornography.
Mm-hmm. I think I've read that too.
It's something they expect because
it's like
something brought him to that, and pornography, I think, is one of those things because of escalation and it kind of veering off into different areas. And to be honest, I don't think we really have any control over that.
Right.
I think it's like almost entirely in the hands of the devil at that point. I don't mean our actions. I mean the way that things will develop.
Oh, right.
The directions that it takes. If you're in an escalation mode and your escalating is finally going and hiring a prostitute, you're one of the lucky ones because you're not, say, digging more into younger and younger girls or looking at homosexual pornography at that point because it escalates into those areas for a lot of guys. Those are
okay. So we've got the 4 stages, and we've confirmed that when it comes to sexual things, pornography, and so forth, basically anything that is outside of spousal lovemaking, use is abuse, of the sexual faculty. So there's 2 things that, and I don't know whether both of them seem like such big topics. I don't know how much time we have to spend on them, but 2 things that seem appropriate to talk about, and maybe we even turn this topic into a 2-show topic. But one of them is for guys, actually I've heard, like listening to Catholic radio when I was up in Michigan. I used to tune into the local Ave Maria radio station all the time, and they have like Al Cresta, talk to have different people on his show. I've heard that women actually have struggle with pornography problems too.
It's becoming a bigger problem from what I understand.
Especially for guys probably. The one is, okay, how do you combat it yourself? What are the different things you can do in the different stages of, I think when it comes to things sexual, it's very difficult even for a married guy to not at least once in a while slip into, the experimental. I mean, even if it's
right.
just a matter of, thinking ahead to, oh my, I've got this 4-day weekend coming up and, I can, spend the night up with my wife and you start fantasizing about stuff. Even if the fantasy, the subject of the fantasy isn't,
sinful.
Let's say it's inappropriate, but it's inappropriate to spend the time fantasizing right now, because you should.
Yeah.
So it's, but nonetheless, it's like so available all the time, even to just think about. It's really difficult for a guy to not at least slip in between that experiment / misuse area when it comes to sexuality. But then you've got the guys who are on the edge from misuse to ritualization or fully into ritualization. And then and even beyond that, the mechanisms, how to, in terms of spiritual battle and in terms of life control, reasserting the right ordering of intellect and appetites and will and so on and so forth, in order to recover from that and to make sure that you don't continue slipping down that slope. That's one topic. Probably we could spend a whole show just talking about that.
I mean,
and then the other topic is your kids. How do you prepare your kids? I
don't know about that one yet. I mean, we're all still trying to prepare our kids for this, and it's like I'm at a stage where I don't know how well I'm doing.
I'm at a stage. I mean, I in the sense that I don't know how well, I don't know how badly I've messed up with regards to that, in the sense that I know that I haven't explicitly okay, wait a minute, I got to prepare my kids to handle the temptations of pornography and that kind of stuff while they were growing up. I acted in ignorance. It's almost like, I'm playing chess while Satan is playing checkers or something like that. You know what I mean? It's like until it was too late to really,
we're not even on the same
engage the game. Yeah, I was not even in the game. So and it's like, okay, well now I just gotta, trust to God. I pray to Saint Joseph every morning.
I think a lot of parents are like
for
that.
my kids and so on and so forth. So there's that. But in fact, I would almost. It's like, gee, that was so unfair that I had to raise my kids in a period before it became so obvious how important it is to set up protections for your kids and train your kids to protect themselves and so forth. If I were going back to the beginning of my child rearing today, wow, there are so many things I would do differently, not just because of the experience of raising the kids, but because of my knowledge of what's going on in the world.
I don't even know if we have an answer for that. I mean, let's say you did have to go back to the beginning. There would be things you do different, but that's really not... You don't know if those things would be right yet or not.
That's true. You'd still be guessing.
So what if we limit all use of the internet and throw the TV out the door and do a whole bunch of other things? You don't know if that does anything yet. When they turn 18, it could be like alcohol, or they turn 21. Oh, well, let's go get drunk.
And what are you going to do? I mean, are you going to not let your kids hang out with other kids? And I'm talking about, when they become teenagers and stuff like that, they go, okay, yeah, we're going to go to the movies. Okay, yeah, go to the movies, and then we'll go to pizza afterwards. And, and maybe they went for pizza afterwards, or maybe they went over to so-and-so's house and pulled up the internet. And stuff like that. Who knows? There's a point at which it's like, okay, the only way to know with a certainty, once kids reach a certain age, it becomes where it's really a tough situation, because they're too young to say, okay, they have to be on their own, but they're too old to micromanage and helicopter every moment of their lives. And so you have to like spend all your time praying for them. And anytime you have an opportunity within interaction with them, you can give them advice. You can make sure they know what's right and what's wrong. Hopefully you've been doing that all their lives anyway. But there's still a period there where it's like they're not ready to deal with what you know is out there ready to grab them. And yet at the same time, it's inappropriate to take the steps that you would have to take in order to be absolutely sure that they're safe from it.
You know,
like you said, they wouldn't necessarily be safe anyway. Mm-hmm.
Is number one, they do have to know what's right and wrong. So you do have to have that talk with them.
Yeah,
look, looking at pictures of naked ladies is it's a grave sin,
right?
And if you pick up a magazine knowing what it is and spend 20 minutes looking at it, you've committed a grave sin.
Yeah, and you got to go to confession for sins.
Right.
I think that's probably one of the big things. And personally, if I could go back and do it again, this would be something that I would do different. I didn't often because of, different situations, moving around and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The different places we live, the churches didn't necessarily have the same commitment to the sacrament of confession. When we lived in Indianapolis, we went to Holy Rosary Church. There were two things that really improved my ability to push my kids in the right direction. The first is that it was a church that felt like a church, and Christ was up there in the tabernacle at the center, and you could go for Mass, and you could get there a half hour early and not feel like you were wasting time sitting around waiting for Mass to start.
Yeah.
So many churches today, it's like, you get there a half hour early, and it's like, well, why am I even here? The second thing is they had confessions before every Mass, and they ran them right up as close to Mass as they possibly could. Now, I know in the pre-Vatican II, they would have had confessions during Mass. Anything they can do to make it so that people can go to confession, so they can go to communion. But they ran it right up to so we would go and we would routinely get there a half hour early. The boys were serving or being trained to serve. Even, they'd be there for serving, but they had time to go to confession, and many times they did go to confession before Mass. And then we moved to Cincinnati, I think it was, and we were up in Westchester, and whole different situations with the churches that we ended up going to there.
It's once a week on Saturday afternoons. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, and it's like if you want to go to confession, you got to make a big deal of, okay, we're going to go to confession, and then, well, okay, we're not going to sit around for an hour before Mass, so then we'll come back home and wait and then go back to Mass.
Right.
And, okay, at St. Martin's, it kind of worked out for us when we were growing up because it was a block away, and so we were encouraged to, and we often did just walk up, go to confession, okay, then we'd walk back home. So there wasn't, that awkwardness. And we didn't have to ask for a ride from our parents if we needed to go to confession for something. Damn, I really need to go to confession.
Yeah, that was a big thing.
We one of the went up and went to confession
that I did with my kids from the start is, first of all, I did explain to them mortal sins. You have to go to confession for a mortal sin. I also promised them the day they made their first communion, and I did this with all of them. I said, if you ever ask me, first of all, if you do not go to communion, I will never ask you why.
Right.
Second of all, if you ever ask me to go to confession, I will never ask you why. I will just make sure you get there.
Right. Not only not ask, but I'm not, it's, and I wish I had done the same thing with my kids. I'm not going to speculate either. I'm not going to assume the worst.
Right.
If you don't go to communion, it might be because you have a bellyache. And I'm not going to assume that it's that instead of because of some sin you've committed. It's, so yeah, I think that was probably a good thing. I think a lot of parents ought to think about that as their kids are approaching those ages and decide that's how they're going to be and that they're going to support their kids that way. I wish I had actually thought of that myself. So that's one thing that, I would redo that aspect if I could go back.
Yeah.
Because if, okay, when you talk about something like pornography and sexual sins generally, it's out there, it's ubiquitous, the opportunity is kind of omnipresent in culture today. Well, you know what? The one thing that you can do for your kids is make the opportunity for forgiveness omnipresent to them.
Right. Well, the question is, do we jump into the next leg of this, or do we put that off to another podcast?
Let's put it off, because
it can be kind of a big subject.
Yeah, and I think it's a subject that deserves to be treated well. I'll say one more thing about the kid raising aspect, though. One of the things that, even if you have the talk with your kids, you may not think to talk about dating and courtship and that kind of stuff in that context. And I know that, and by the way, I'm not going to take credit for this. I'm going to give credit. There's a fella out there who himself has done a lot of talks and given a lot of seminars about pornography addiction and that kind of stuff. His name is Matt Fradd. And I heard this on one of his shows. He's, I don't know where he got it. Maybe he thought of it himself. But one of the things that especially boys want to know while they're dating is, how far am I allowed to go? Which itself is the wrong question, because it's like, well, what can I get away with, when it comes to interacting with my girlfriend and that kind of stuff. He had the perfect answer. And his answer was this: if you're with your girlfriend, I mean, obviously she's interesting as a person, otherwise you wouldn't be hanging out with her. If the only thing that you're hanging out with her for is because, there's some kind of sexual interest involved, then, get away from her. Because, even the fact that she's pretty is not a sexual thing. Okay, that initial attractiveness and the desire to be in her company and to spend time conversing with her and having dinner, that's all non-sexual. But here's the thing: if you're doing something with her, whether it's sitting on the couch, you've got your arm around her, whether it's standing, and walking in a park, and you stop and spend a few minutes, in a caress or whatever it is. If you start feeling that kind of stirring in the pit of your stomach, if you're starting to feel a little bit of that movement, that's the signal. That means, okay, wait a minute, this is going in the wrong direction. Back out, find another direction to go. That's the answer. And it may be different for different guys. And it may be different in different situations.
Well,
but it can't, because Matt Fradd does
we'll
deal with pornography in his talks and stuff. So
we will... I don't know if it's going to be next week, but we will talk about what men can do, I guess, first to avoid the trap, and second of all, some of the things they can do to get out of the trap.
Yeah, what if you've fallen into the trap, I think in some ways it's a little bit like healthy eating. Okay, and I'll kind of relate this to my wife. I hope she wouldn't be offended if she hears this, but like she's diabetic. She got type 2 diabetes. Okay, so now she's on a dietary plan that has just absolutely transformed her. She's got off her diabetes medicines. She's lost over 60 pounds. And she feels good, she has more energy, and so on and so forth. But she can never go back to eating the way she used to eat. In fact, she can never go back to eating the way she should have been eating all those years. If she had, eaten right.
That's true.
And I think it's that way when it comes to, pornography. I know it's that way when it comes to, like, alcoholism. It's probably that way when it comes to a gambling addiction. It's got to be that way with pornography too. If you've gotten into a certain level of that trap, then there are things that you have to take care that normally you wouldn't have to.
You're looking at a life-changing thing here to get out of it. It's not like, well, I just stop.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a gambling addict, you can't ever go to a casino You even have to avoid certain stores that sell the lottery tickets, things like that. And or same with alcohol. You have to avoid certain neighborhoods, certain people,
certain neighborhoods. And if you're an alcoholic who has, your thing has been, whiskey, and you go through a fifth of whiskey every other day. Okay, you get yourself sober. Well, you know what? You can't have a beer now. So, oh, okay, that's another addiction.
Yeah, I had to walk away to get coffee.
You know what? If coffee's your worst addiction, you have a really well-balanced life.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to put that off. But we will talk about some current events.
Oh, man. So weird.
First of all, President Trump announced his reopening the economy plan.
Right.
I feel a little disappointed. I mean, if everything goes well, you're still looking at least a month and a half before things get anywhere close to normal. And I kind of think nothing will go back to normal. But I wish it was more aggressive. Mm-hmm. And already we've got governors saying, no, they're not going to do that. I don't understand that at all. I don't.
Me neither.
These governors depend on the economy. They need people engaging in commerce in order to run the government. They need it. They think they're going to get it all from federal taxes or something?
Yeah. Well, where do you think federal taxes come from? I mean, the thing is that it's like, okay, like Trump, we've got this so-called stimulus, checks that are going out to everybody that, and I think Trump's originally, he wanted to send a lot of money, put a lot of money into businesses. And
he wanted to keep businesses alive because
so that they would be
the
there to because if a business, take a restaurant. Okay, during the pre pandemic activity, a restaurant, it had patrons and it had workers. The patrons spent money. The restaurant paid its workers. It was part of a economy, and it generated wealth. It engaged its workers to create new services and products that people paid for and consumed, and they paid money for. And the movement of the money that was involved from that business created wealth from which the governments got their tax dollars and so on and so forth. If we have this, because of this pandemic corona shutdown, that restaurant goes out of business, which, okay, if you're McDonald's, you're not going to go out of business. But there's a lot of local restaurants that will go out of business. When that restaurant shuts down and closes its doors, and it's not going to open back up even after the governors lift the restrictions, patrons aren't going to go pay money there anymore. Workers aren't going to work there. That particular segment, as small as it is, of the economy is gone. And its contribution to the generation and increase of wealth in society is gone. And it's not coming back. Now, there may be somebody at some point who comes up and identifies, okay, wait a minute, there's a building. I can get that real cheap because the owner needs to sell it because, he's paying a mortgage on it and so on and so forth. And so I'll get it and I'll buy it and then I'll open my, version of a restaurant and so forth. But in the meantime, all of the money he spends on the capital to acquire and everything else involved in getting started, that's not wealth generation. That's just sucking money out of society. It's the ongoing operation of the business that generates wealth.
That's just the cold, hard side of it. There's also the fact that someone started that business, and it wasn't just an idea to make money. Mm-hmm. It was a dream. Yeah. He had all these things he wanted to do. And usually you look at little businesses like that, whether it's restaurants or little hardware stores or whatever, you'll find out that the owners often say lent their workers money to buy a car and then took a little bit out of their paycheck at a time. You find that kind of stuff happening a whole lot in these tiny little businesses that are closing down.
Yeah.
And it's criminal what's happening right now.
Yeah.
I mean, these people, their lives are suddenly, they may as well be over. They may as well have died of coronavirus because everything that they lived for has suddenly been pulled out from under them, and it was no fault of their own.
Right.
They didn't do anything to cause this. It wasn't even mistakes that they made. It was just handing down of orders from the governor.
From a governor's, right.
Mike DeWine.
And for what? You know, it's the worst projections of this virus don't even come close to making it a Marburg or a bird flu or a a black plague or anything like that. And I mean, it's something that we could weather. Okay, there's certain people that should take precautions, but we could get through this. We don't need to close the economy or risk losing half the population or anything like that. It's not that kind of virus. And so what's the purpose of all this stupid shutdown stuff? I don't know whether there's some, back room conspiracy behind it or whatever, but in terms of the effects of it, it is the worst kind of training people to just do what they're told because they're told that you can think of. When you look at, you've got drones flying over, parks in New York, broadcasting messages to practice social distancing. By the way, does that term rankle you the way it rankles me? Practice social distancing. What a stupid phrase.
Stupid. Yeah.
And you've got, people arrested. The group of people that, wanted to have a service. They said, okay, we know, physical presence is something people like and that kind of stuff. And so this, I don't know which church it was, but the preacher said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to broadcast, and I'll work out to broadcast my service, and you guys can come you park in the parking lot, maintain your social isolation, just turn your radios to this station. You can be in the parking lot, and we'll all be together, and we'll do the service that way. I don't think it was a Catholic thing. Okay, so everybody was doing that. Well, guess what? Everybody who was there, they were safe as far as their own intentions and their own plans go. Where did the possible exposure to, the virus come from? It was from the cops who were going around knocking on their windows, asking them to roll their windows down so they could hand them a $500 ticket.
It's disgusting.
It's disgusting. Absolutely. And if somebody suggests, hey, when is the governor going to, lift these? We're starting to get rallies of people who go and say, hey, we want these. And of course, all the news channels, paint them like they're some kind of zombie apocalypse, weirdos or something like that.
Yeah.
And people, will jump on them and say, hey, those restrictions are there for our protection. It's like and I think it's more liberals and it's more millennials are being trained in this concept of a paternalistic model of government. The government is there to take care of you, not just to address the corner cases where people taking care of themselves might come into conflict, or where somebody might actually, through ill intentions, cause harm. But the government is there to take care of you, and so you better do everything the government says. That's what I'm saying. In fact, if somebody were to sit down and write a script to cover a movie, for example, to cover the transitional point of a society from normal, healthy society into a dystopian kind of...
Be right here.
They could not do better than to use exactly what's going on now. This is exactly what they would come up with in the most realistic kind of scripting. And that's what's so bizarre.
We were headed that direction for a long time. And in the past 3 or 4 years, we thought we were getting away from it. We thought we were headed in the right direction again.
Yeah.
And this happened, and it's almost like we're back to square one now.
And I honestly,
the American people, and
people are going to call me nuts. They're going to say that I'm, oh, yeah, you're a weirdo conspiracy theorist. I honestly think that there are those in, cultural power positions. I'm talking about people who are, who control certain media outlets and that kind of stuff, who saw the virus itself. Okay, the virus itself warrants caution. And I think there are those who saw it and its timing as an opportunity to reverse, to put a stop and nip in the bud that trend against this dystopian development that you're referring to that we thought we were on for the last 3 or 4 years.
Right. At this point, we just got to keep praying that at least Trump takes us in the right direction. I'd love to see him more ambitious, but it is what it is. At least he's pointing it the right way again. And I don't know. I would love to see a bunch of business owners saying, you know what, we're just going to open.
Let's just do it. Yeah. I mean, it's like, okay, governors, do you want to use your National Guard to, shut down your economy, or do you want to use them for something that's useful? But we're going to open back up and we're going to start serving customers again. I would love to see that, and I would be one of those customers, out there patronizing those businesses if they did that.
I would be one of those businesses. Only I am one of those businesses. I never shut down. I was like, I'm not shutting down.
Well, yeah.
But I could find a reason to call myself essential. Mm-hmm. But no one ever pulled me over or anything to ask me about it, so I just kept working.
Yeah, I think the Midwestern states are mostly a little bit more sane-headed. Even when the governors have shut down and issued, the orders, I think the Midwestern states are a little bit more sane-headed than places like, But even Michigan though, Michigan is
Michigan's
from what I've heard
is
it's that they're.
But there are people revolting there.
Yeah.
I think everybody gathered in Lansing for a protest.
That's
people
one of
gathered
those
here
protests.
In Ohio too.
Yeah. Oh, did they?
Up at Columbus, there was a protest. I think it was in Columbus against Governor Mike DeWine. I'm going to start calling him Mike Nero because he sat and played the fiddle while
Rome burned,
while the state burned down.
That's right. Exactly. That's what it's like.
I think I will vote Democrat before I vote for him again. I'm so angry about this.
And it's so bizarre because it's not like they, it would be one thing if the governors were in a like between a rock and a hard place and thinking about, I got to think about the people of my state, and maybe I have to push back and test the waters and violate maybe some federal orders in order to do so. It's the opposite.
Right.
It's like the governors are killing their states. Yeah. In spite of federal encouragement to be cautious about shutting down the economy.
Right. It's terrible. Okay. There were some tornadoes over the weekend.
Yeah, one of them real close to me.
Across the mid-state, yeah.
In fact, this was so weird.
I don't have anything yet on how much damage they caused.
Well, I can say this.
There were something like 30-something deaths.
I drove through one of the cities, Mooresville, that had a tornado. This is so weird. Okay, you think of a tornado and you think of it as touching down and then having a path. And then he's, the tornado went right through here. You can see the path, and there's the trees that it cut down. I want to go look into Mooresville and see more about, the city itself and that kind of stuff, because as far as I could tell, I drove through Mooresville, and as far as I could tell, the tornado touched down, destroyed, it's a small city, a small town, it's not like Indianapolis or anything like that.
Yeah.
Touchdown, destroyed the downtown, central, governance Main Street stuff, and then went away.
Wow.
It was weird. Yeah, I drove through it. And it's like, okay, they've got
most of them do the opposite
out.
That.
What's that?
Most of them do the opposite. You follow the path of the tornadoes where they actually touch down, and you'll see that they'll go through suburbs, they'll go through all kinds of places. But when they get to the city, they pick up and they come back down on the other side of the city.
Kind of weird. It's like it touched down in the middle of the city and then didn't go anywhere. Just destroyed the middle of the city and went away. It was so weird. Now, that's my impression driving through, because I kind of drove through and around, and it's like, okay, wait a minute, but I can see the buses, I can see where the buildings that it destroyed are basically laying out into the street and that kind of stuff, and it's torn up, but nothing else around it. Very weird.
Well, our thoughts and prayers go out to people who are in that emergency, and also the people who are out of work.
Yes, absolutely.
It's like a double whammy.
Yeah, that's...
So have you heard about the wildfires in Chernobyl?
Chernobyl? I heard about wildfires in Australia.
Well, there's some in Chernobyl, and the fires reached...
Nobody lives there yet, though, right?
No. Right. Nobody's there. But the fires reached, the city of, I don't even know, Pripyat.
Okay.
The main city, the abandoned city. The
right.
fires reached that. I don't think they got into the city. I thought there was nothing in the city but brick.
Yeah.
But,
okay, brick, but there would still be a lot of wood involved in the buildings and that kind of stuff. But
now there's a lot of trees growing in there. Trees growing right up through the concrete and stuff.
Trees will grow right. Yeah, that's true.
But I don't. Apparently, they didn't get really inside the city. And I don't know if they stopped them or if they stopped by themselves. Because I don't know if they were even fighting them. But there were wildfires in Chernobyl.
Huh. How about that?
That was interesting.
That is interesting.
Now, President Trump's campaign filed a lawsuit against a Wisconsin TV station.
Okay.
For one of the advertisements it aired criticizing Trump.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if that's... I mean, way back when, what's her name? What was her name? Who ran for vice president with...
Yeah, Palin, Alaska. Sarah Palin.
What was her name?
Sarah Palin.
Oh, Sarah Palin. Yeah,
she's Alaska. Mm-hmm.
She sued someone for deprivation, I think.
Okay.
Or defamation.
Defamation, right. Mm-hmm.
Defamation. She sued someone for defamation. I think she lost. But Trump wants stronger laws concerning this. He doesn't think that just because you're famous, anybody should be allowed to say anything they want. And I kind of tend to agree with him on this. But I don't know.
It's kind of
not all the way,
though. It depends on what exactly they're talking. I would draw a line, for example, between personal defamation and political criticism, and it's the difficulty of drawing that line. I would even say,
it doesn't matter if take
a movie celebrity. Okay, movie celebrity, they're not really running for anything. There's no reason to criticize there's no cause to say that for the political health of the First Amendment and that kind of stuff, you have to be willing to say anything you want about them. But you take somebody who's, once they've entered into politics, political criticism has to be absolutely protected. But at the same time, there's a point where personal defamation, you've still got to give them a right of redress.
Well, I don't know.
When it comes to that, you know what I mean?
If we're going to criticize Trump for how he handled COVID-19...
that would be one thing. If on the other hand...
Yeah, I know, but that's what he is suing them for.
Are you sure?
Well, that's what the news story says they're suing him for, about the way he handled COVID-19. The question is, are they lying about what he did?
Well, okay, is he suing them, or are they suing him?
He is suing them.
Okay, because they're claiming that he did something. Like, for example, let's suppose that they're claiming that Trump met with his advisors and they all determined that it would be best for their campaign if COVID-19 was allowed to spread. And so he purposely allowed COVID. That would be an example of defamation. That I'm like, okay, wait a minute. That's going to the personal that if you're going to report that and you don't have your facts in a row,
right.
you maybe ought to be open to a lawsuit for that. But if you're just going to report and report, for example, an editorial and say Trump's handling of the COVID-19 situation was completely irresponsible, okay, that's a political judgment. You shouldn't be liable for something like that. But you see what I mean?
Yeah, that's how I feel.
Okay, I don't know exactly what the lawsuit is over. I didn't even realize it was there until you brought it up. So I don't know how to exactly address this particular.
We'll see how it plays out, but I have a feeling Trump is going to lose. I don't know why.
And if it's really
these
the
guys
kind
are
of
big on freedom of speech.
If it's really kind of the political thing, I kind of wish he'd not bother with it. You know?
Yeah, I know. But he always has been big on this. Long before he got into politics, he would. It bothered him that anybody could say anything they wanted about him, and there was nothing he could do about it.
Oh, okay.
When they could just make up lies and say it, and he could do nothing.
Yeah.
Because he's a public figure.
I see.
That's always been one of his bugaboos.
Well, and if he can find a good way to draw that line in a way that courts can support it, and that it really that it doesn't, violate people's rights to political expression. Okay, more power to him, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So.
Speaking of political speech, Bernie endorses Joe Biden
seriously?
as the presumptive nominee.
Wow.
Yeah.
That surprises me.
All those people who put all their faith in Bernie, don't you guys feel kind of stupid now?
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't even fight. He didn't even fight. This is the second time they took it from him, and he didn't fight.
And you know what? From like the earliest, he was the Green candidate too. This is actually, you know what? I wonder if I have the picture of this. I took a picture. I hope I have this picture because this would be kind of my nonsense part of the nonsense news thing. But I'm going to see if I have this. Hold on.
All right.
Okay.
While you're doing that,
go ahead. With the next thing.
Trump has suspended funding to the World Health Organization. That is awesome. There's no reason we should have been funding these people.
Yeah,
they were just Chinese talking people, and that's all. So that's over. He's getting a lot of flack for that, but we're 100% behind him.
Yep, absolutely.
There were okay. This happened in New Jersey. There was a morgue at a nursing home, and the morgue was built for 4 people. And police discovered 17 people in it. 17 bodies.
Oh, okay. Got it.
And
which,
I don't... That's really the only story. I mean, that's it.
That's the entirety of the story.
Right. There was they had 17 bodies in there, and they were only supposed to have 4.
But this is a morgue. What are they going to do with the other bodies?
I don't know, because I'm hearing that cemeteries are closing down.
Yeah. I don't, I'm sympathetic. I don't get,
The 13 bodies were moved to a refrigerated truck at a neighboring hospital, while the remaining 4 were set to stay there at the nursing home.
Okay.
The rules that around this COVID-19 are so stupid. What is it better to have them in a refrigerated truck instead of burying them?
Yeah, that's...
So, body buildup is a problem. But it's not because there's so many bodies, it's because the cemetery's shut down.
It's because of the stupid... Yeah, exactly.
People die every day. We got to deal with that. Okay, that's all I got in the news. There's not much out there.
Okay, well, I don't have a picture. I wish I had a picture, but I consider Bernie the first Green candidate of this election cycle, even though he's out now, because I saw way back at the beginning of the cycle, before people were talking a lot about the Democrat field and about the Democrat before the debates, that preceded the primaries and anything were going on. I saw a bumper sticker, and it said Bernie 2020, but the 2020 was taped over a 2016. So it's like, okay, Bernie's fans are already recycling
bumper stickers. Wow.
It's like, okay, well, it didn't work in 2016. Let me just put a 2020 over it.
We ought to buy some right now and tape 2024 over it.
That's right. Okay,
2028, 2032.
20, yeah. How often do you want to recycle? All right. Let's see. So this is odd. Somebody wrote on NPR why America is losing the toilet race. Okay, I have to admit that race, like with Japan, like the space race, except this is the toilet race.
Oh, okay.
I have to admit that once in a while, if I've got a little, it might take a little while for things to move, and I'll sit down, I'll pull out my phone, and I'll read I'll have like a story, I have a Nook app on my phone. I buy books that way, and I'll pull it out and start reading while I'm on the toilet once in a while. Okay. But I never think of going to the bathroom as a getaway experience. Really? However, this person from NPR is writing, he says, I just got back from my first trip to Japan. I'm now in love with the country. Of all the things I fell in love with, there's one I can't stop thinking about, the toilets. Marvels of technological innovation. And they're talking about the fact that they're self-cleaning. They have a little, what do you call it? They integrated, is it bidets or bidets or the things that squirt water up your ass to clean it off?
I don't know what those are called, but sometimes I kind of wish we had them.
Okay, but here's the thing: you want it integrated into the toilet so that the water it's squirting might also be from the same nozzle that people like peed on and stuff like that.
No.
Okay.
Well, I think you would have a little thing that's, I don't know. You'd have to put your hand in there then.
Well, you control it from the outside.
I've never even seen one. I just see them on TV.
Yeah, it's, you control it from the outside or whatever. Anyway, so then they clean themselves, deodorize, so the bathrooms smell good. They have white noise machines so you can fill your stall with the sounds of rain or relaxation. Some have built-in night lights and music players. Okay, and here's the quotable quote of all of this. I don't know how to interpret this. That's when he had his first experience with the washlet bidet, and it was much like mine. It began with apprehension, a little bit of angst, he says, but then he pushed the spray button and had a joyous sensation.
Oh.
How do you interpret that? I don't know what to say. Okay.
I don't know.
That's...
But, look, if I didn't have my morning routine, I would never read a book. I mean, it's a part of my life.
Okay, wait a minute. Are you saying that you've reached the
as
ritualizing?
I get older, it's more and
the
more
ritualizing stage
I ritualize the toilet. It's part of what I do when I get up. As a matter of fact, if a kid wants me to go somewhere, they know they have to wake me up 45 minutes early to give me time to do my morning thing.
Okay, I'm going to say I'm still halfway between the experimenting and the misuse abuse.
Well, someday you'll find the joy of
ritualizing
bathrooming.
Okay.
Here's the thing. I worked at the Amazon warehouse.
Oh, that's right.
For a couple years. Mm-hmm. Business wasn't as good as it could be, and I needed the money, so I did some 10-hour shifts in Amazon.
Right.
And I would go into the bathroom and it smelled so bad, and it was so disgusting.
Yeah.
And the whole bathroom was just terrible.
But you know they do that on purpose,
and
right?
I that could be. But here's the thing. I always worked on the west side of the building.
Oh.
And one day, I had to cover for someone who was working on the east side of the building. So I work on the east side of the building. I gotta go. I just do my normal steps to go into the bathroom and turn the normal ways, which led me into the girls' bathroom because it's backwards.
Wow. Oh, why don't they gotta put it on the same side.
You don't understand. It was pink.
Uh-huh.
There was a couch in there.
A couch?
It smelled great.
A couch?
There were bubbles. Yeah.
In the bathroom, a couch? You could lounge?
Yes. It was leather. It was wonderful in there. I wanted to stay. I got embarrassed. I turned back around, but as I'm walking out, I'm thinking, wait a minute, this place is pretty nice.
Couch? I mean, I could see painting it pink, but a couch?
Especially in a warehouse where numbers are everything. I mean,
well, that just blew my
anytime
theory.
you take off, it counts against you. If you go to the bathroom, it counts against you. I
assumed they made it smell bad to keep people from spending time in there.
I think men just stink.
If I had a business, I'd do it. I would pipe bad smelling, stink into the bathrooms.
Yeah.
If I had a business, I don't think
you'd have to. If you had a warehouse full of men,
I would pipe the men's room over to the women's bathroom.
Yeah.
A couch.
So get the girls out of there.
I can't believe that.
It was wonderful. I did not want to leave, and I thought so. Maybe
all right, I got to go ask
maybe
my
this
wife
guy
after
has
this.
never been to the women's bathroom.
Have you ever worked somewhere where there's a couch in the bathroom?
This guy in Japan has never been to a woman's bathroom.
I guess
obviously.
that's you've already got luxury.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So anyway, but you know what? I agree. Maybe bathrooms could be more technological, but I don't know.
We've had the same toilet for like 80 years.
You know what?
There's
it works.
been no real.
It works for me. I don't care that it's the same. It works.
Yeah.
Okay. Next item on my list. I've got a woman that this is just in a way it's just cool. It's like on the little side of bizarre, but it's kind of cool. This woman, a Dagmar Turner, 53-year-old management consultant from the Isle of Wight in Britain. She had some brain surgery that she had to undergo, and she wanted to make sure that they didn't stray too close to the part of the brain or damage the part of the brain that controls the fine movement of her hands. So what she did, and she apparently came up with this, she played the violin while they were doing the brain surgery.
Huh.
Kind of cool.
Well, that's kind of... Yeah, I mean, when my daughter had a crooked spine and they had to do... It was an 18-hour operation to straighten her spine.
Yeah, that's the one. She came out like a giant because they straightened her spine. She
was like
taller.
2 or 3 inches taller.
Yeah.
But during the operation, they had the anesthesiologist was in an entirely separate room.
Uh-huh.
He was monitoring brain waves.
Okay.
And that's how he was... He wasn't even... well, I guess he was also looking at heart rate and stuff like that. But to tell how much more or less of the medicine... Mm-hmm. Yeah, he wasn't even in the same room. He was just looking at her brain waves and then controlled it from there.
Wow.
They do a lot of neat things with that stuff.
Yeah.
And they're getting better at it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's amazing that people can be awake during brain surgery like that, because the brain itself, even though it's where all your neurons are, the brain itself doesn't actually have any pain nerves.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's why they can do surgery like that while you're awake.
Huh. Well,
now, you'd think pulling apart the piece of the skull would involve a little bit of pain, but maybe they can do local anesthesia for that. I don't know.
I'll rewatch that movie on what's his name, the Hannibal.
Oh, Hannibal Lecter.
The Hannibal the Cannibal.
Yeah.
And there one where he's got the guy's brain and he eats it in front of him or makes him eat it.
I don't remember that. Is that part of the
I think
original,
it's the second
Silence
movie,
of the
I
Lambs?
think.
I have the only one I've actually watched all the way through was the Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, me too. I just saw a part of it. He had the guy strapped down and he had cut a little hole in his head and he had taken a piece of the brain out and made the guy eat it.
That is so disgusting.
That's disturbing. But,
do you think Anthony Hopkins gets off on playing roles like that?
I did not know that.
I don't know. I'm asking. Do you think?
Did you say? Do I think?
Yeah.
I think more than anything, it's such a memorable role that. I mean, he's also played in some kind of strong Catholic movies. Mm-hmm. Right? The Right?
Did you see The Right?
The Right?
Yeah, he that was
him.
Yeah. I didn't think that was.
I thought it was really good until the end.
Well, in the first 20 minutes, I don't know. I don't even remember the actual end. The first 20 minutes, I didn't think I was going to like it as much, and then as I watched it, I got to like it more and more. I don't remember the ending.
Yeah, I liked it more and more until the very ending. Then I was like, all right, this is stupid.
Oh, so how did it end? Remind me. His dad was in hell. I can't remember now. See, now I don't know. But right. I remember, I thought, it was only the very ending. I thought, they could just cut out the ending and it would be fine. Now I gotta go rewatch it.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Me too.
All right. So,
have you ever had one of those games that you hook up this thing to your head and you control an object by thinking?
I think they're all bogus.
They work.
Huh?
I'm telling you, they work.
Yeah, we had one. I think it's bogus.
Why do you think it's bogus?
Because it doesn't work. Because no matter what you do, we had the one where it like had the air that was blowing the little ball, and you had to try to raise the ball up or down to get through the thing. Yeah, it was bogus.
Yeah,
it was random.
Why do you say that?
Because it was random.
No, it wasn't.
Okay,
I closed my eyes. Mm-hmm. I closed my eyes, and when I tried to think of a math problem, it would work, and when I didn't, it didn't.
Okay, so how with your eyes closed do you get the ball to go through the hoops?
Huh?
How with your eyes closed do you get the ball through the hoops? Because you had to raise and lower it to go through the hoops.
No, it was one of those things where the thing was either off or on.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't have that one.
And by thinking about something would turn it on, I think. It's something like that.
You'll have to... Do you still have it? I want to see it.
I think I do.
All right.
I'll find it.
Next time we're going
to... Next party,
you know what?
Let's
plan...
Or maybe I'll buy a new one just for that.
Let's plan to violate the stupid state shutdowns, and you can show me this game.
Yeah.
All right.
If I can't find it, I'm going to buy it.
Okay. I look forward to it. Because the one we had was bogus.
Do we have any more nonsense?
Just one. And this is true nonsense. Okay, so you got this is a coronavirus nonsense. So, a guy named Dr. Fauci, I don't know, Fauci or Fauci or whatever.
Yeah, everybody knows Fauci, that idiot.
Idiot is exactly the right word. And,
he's a communist.
Maybe this is apropos given the topic of our show today. So, you know, now he's, and this is why, okay, these government idiots, do I really want to take health advice from this guy? He recommends if you're tired of you know, putting your sex life online, then, you know, okay, maybe you can hook up with some Tinder matches, you know, as long as you recognize that there's a little bit of risk involved.
What?
Seriously? Yeah. I mean, you're wondering, am I making that up? No, that's...
Fauci is recommending Tinder.
Yeah, as a you know, if you're, you know, if your sex life isn't what you feel like it needs to be during the shutdown, okay, do an anonymous hookup. Just recognize that there's some risk involved.
Doesn't that include the risk that he's trying to avoid by shutting the whole damn nation down?
Exactly. You know what? Why not instead let people go out to a restaurant and live normal
AIDS?
Lives and not feel like they have to go hook up with strangers because they can actually involve in, you know, engage in social activities. This is the idiotness, you know, from these so-called government experts.
I don't understand why Trump is giving him a microphone.
Exactly. Trump should take his mic away.
I'm sure there's a reason, and I just have to trust Trump right now that there is a reason.
I think Trump is being bombarded. Stupid. You know, the thing is, Trump can't control everything. Yeah, he's the president, but
know.
He can't control everything. I feel, and I'm calling you to task a little bit for this, for feeling like he ought to control more than I think he really, than we have a right to expect him to control.
But this guy?
Yeah, this guy's
this guy's in charge of everything.
He should be fired. He's just an idiot.
People are asking him if we can reopen the economy.
Yeah.
Why is this joker being asked about the economy? He doesn't know anything about the economy.
No, exactly.
Apparently he doesn't know anything about health either.
No. By the way, somebody at my work, our work is, encouraged, if people have some funny memes, to send out an email just to kind of keep the morale up, to send out humorous stuff.
Yeah.
So somebody sent out this morning a picture of the subject of the meme, and it just says, "Sit down, Bill. You couldn't even save Windows from viruses." Bill Gates.
Oh, yeah, because of the Bill Gates thing.
Yeah. So anyway, that's it for me.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, true nonsense there, huh?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, well, folks, think
no.
about what we said. What?
Wait a minute. There is one more.
What?
I should have led with this. Okay, so a Facebook post from the Taneytown Police Department. Okay, this is in Maryland. Please remember to put pants on before leaving the house to check your mailbox. You know who you are. This is your final warning.
Wow.
Yeah.
I used to deliver papers, and you'd be surprised how many old ladies walk out of the house naked at 5 a.m. on Sunday mornings.
Like, you're not talking like bathrobe. You're talking about like full naked?
Not full naked, but bathrobe hanging open.
Oh, okay.
And all kinds of things hanging open
I
and
see.
bending over in front of me to pick up the paper that I just threw to them.
Yeah, it's like...
something you want to see on Sunday morning.
I never had a paper route.
Pull your pants on.
Okay, so maybe it's a well-placed ad from the police. Taneytown.
I get fully dressed to get up from my bed and walk to the bathroom.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine walking outside naked.
Or
without pants.
I have gone out in my bedrobe to let the dog go, do his business.
Was there
only when
have a bathrobe?
Only when it's dark.
What do you make movies or something?
What? Bathrobes are only for making movies?
A bathrobe?
Yeah.
You have a bathrobe.
Why not?
I don't know. Only people who have bathrobes are people who live in an insane asylum or people who make porn.
Well, I don't make porn, and
that's what I thought.
Sometimes I think my house is
You're
an
crazy
insane asylum.
then.
So maybe that's it.
Do you wear this thing around?
No, not around, but if I'm like... I don't want to go out. I don't want to put clothes on, and I don't want to go outside in my boxers, so I'll put a bathrobe on.
Then stay in bed, lazy.
Stay in bed, lazy?
Bathrobe.
Okay.
You either get up or you don't get up. If you get up, put your clothes on and get up.
You know what? Sometimes dogs have to be let out in the middle of the night. Or I might want to go downstairs for a sandwich.
I get dressed to do that.
I get up and I don't want to get, I don't want to get up for the day, but I'm going to go downstairs for a sandwich. And, the kids might come down or something like that. So I don't want to be in my boxers, so I'll put a bathrobe on. Was
there a Malcolm in the Middle where Hal gets trapped out of the house in his underwear?
Don't remember that. I'm sure there was one. I mean, that would be the kind of thing that...
He went out to get the paper and... No. Wait a minute. I all the Malcolm in the Middle is running my head now, and they're all together. But I think there's one where he goes outside to get the newspaper, and he was trying to hurry up and grab it, and then get back inside.
Oh,
while
because
he was still in his underwear
on.
And the door locked.
And then
then he was locked outside, and he's standing there in his underwear trying to get in. I can't remember how the segment ended, but it's a classic Hal scene.
Yeah.
I love that show. All right.
Okay.
We got to wrap up.
Yeah, we got to. I'm over time anyway.
All right, folks, think about what we said, and I don't know what we're going to talk about next week. Maybe we'll go in and finish up this subject.
Yep, might do that. Might come with something else. In any case,
keep
circle the beads.
Yep.
And bye, folks.
We'll see you next time.
All right.